Okay.
All righty.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go on the record. It is 8:30. We have an elevator division case to consider today. It's case number 21-0003, and it deals with an elevator adjudication down at the Lucas County Correction Center, or at the Lucas County Correction Center up in Toledo. Let's have an introduction of the parties. I do believe we have representatives from the appellant. Would you state your full name, spell your last name, and then the representative capacity by which you're appearing on behalf of the Correction Center? We'll do the same thing with the elevator division chief. We'll have an oath administered. I'll get a waiver, and then I'll try to get a waiver from you to proceed in front of a board of 4. Mr. Bremer.
Hello, my name is Donald Brimmer with Vertical Mobility of Toledo. Last name Brimmer.
Okay. And is Mr. Nowak appearing with you?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Okay.
Yep, my name is Jeff Nowak, Nowak. I'm the Deputy Director of Facilities with Lucas County.
Okay, very good. And Chip? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Chief Charles Updike, Chief Elevator Inspector for the state of Ohio.
Okay, gentlemen, if you would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath?
Okay, looking at me.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay.
I do.
And before we begin, Mr. Brimmer, Mr. Nowak, and Mr. Updike, for that matter, the Board of Building Appeals is designed to be a board of 5. Our fire official member's term expired, and that has not been reappointed yet by the governor. So we're a board of 4 today. If there were to be a split vote, and it would be more likely, I suppose, with a board of 4 than a board of 5. Although with abstentions, you could still have a split vote with a board of 5. But in any event, if there was a split vote, the adjudication order of the elevator division would stand. Having heard that, do you still, Mr. Nowak, want to proceed?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Updike, any objection to proceeding?
No.
Okay. Mr. Brimmer, Mr. Nowak, you have the floor.
The Lucas County Correction Center has requested a variance on the communications monitoring system due to the fact that they have audible and visual way to check the action of the system before each and every use of the elevator system, as compared to a monitoring system that will only give off a signal when the telephone signal fails. With the camera systems they have in the jail and the intercom system they have in the jail, the intercom system has to be utilized in order to call the elevator to the floor before a passenger can enter the elevator. And also the intercom system inside the elevator has to be utilized to register a call to a destination floor. So the operator of the elevator up in the control room always has control of the elevator. They can see who's in the elevator. They can speak with whoever's in the elevator. And in that instance, we believe that the monitoring system would be not necessary, or it'd be redundant. And then also the second item is the emergency door lock releases. As being a jail facility, they're trying to maintain maximum security. There are door releases now at the basement floor and at the top floor, and we also have elevator access added during the modernization of the elevator. So we can still maintain access to the car top and to the pit through electronic means of access or through mechanical means of emergency door lock releases. So additional door locks on the intermediate floors we're trying to avoid in order to maintain maximum security.
How many floors is the county jail?
It has 2 elevators that are 7 floors, and 1 elevator that is 9 floors.
Okay, questions of board members of the appellant? Hearing none. Mr. Updike, do you want to tell us the position of the division?
I have no objections or conditions for the phone and the first variance, which is number 2 on our list that he had mentioned. What that is a phone monitoring system. It monitors the line voltage of the phone, and their means meets the intent in my opinion. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I know it's a little confusing there. So their video and audio meets the intent of the monitoring because it's continuously monitored through human intervention. So no objections or conditions. The hoistway access, he's referring to the excussions that are required on every floor. That's the excussion tube where you would enter an elevator door key to pop the door lock. I don't have any objections to that because we still have access to the top and bottom. And this being a new modernization, the elevator has a means of manual lowering. So if there is an entrapment, there's no reason to use intermediate floors for rescue when you can manually lower someone to the bottom floor and let them walk out. As long as we indicate any type of maintenance issues or anything like that for accessing intermediate floors, we have a procedure for that. That's all I have.
So on the first issue you spoke to where it talks about in your opinion, it meets the intention of the code, does that mean it does not require variance?
Well, the elevator code specifically says you shall monitor via electronic means and it shall be checked every 24 hours. So yeah, it does need a variance.
Okay. Okay. Questions of either of the parties by members of the board or expression of your sentiments?
I think that makes sense personally. So I would be in support of a variance for this.
What's an discussion?
An excussion is basically the reference to that hole that's in the elevator door about 6 feet high. It has just an open tube, if you will.
And what does that provide you?
That's where you would, an excussion is actually a keyhole in a regular door, and we refer to that as an excussion on an elevator, and that's where you would slide your elevator door key, your drop key in there to pick door locks from the outside without the elevator car being there. It's for maintenance
so
purposes only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to
So
open
Brad, in all of your years, you haven't seen somebody open an elevator door when the elevator's not there?
No, I can't say that I have. No. Okay. That's
Comfort level, Neil
I'm fine with it.
and Brad?
yeah, I'm fine with it.
And I heard Chip say he didn't need to impose any conditions. So that being the case, is there a motion?
That's not the case. I think he did have some conditions. So if you would not mind, Mr. Chair, this variance is conditioned upon alternative procedures for accessing the hoistway shall be provided for emergency and maintenance personnel and posted in the elevator machine room to the satisfaction of the chief elevator inspector.
Okay, Mr. Bremer,
Yes.
those conditions acceptable?
Yes.
And Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Okay. With that, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. For Ohio Board of Building Appeals, case number 21-0003. The appellant is the Lucas County Building Services for the premises Lucas County Correction Center at 1622 Spielbush Avenue, Toledo, Ohio 43624. The appellee is Charles Updike, Chief Elevator Inspector for the state of Ohio, and adjudication order number E 2020-23311. I move to grant the variance subject to the condition previously read in the record and noting the no objection of the chief elevator inspector.
Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, by a 4-0 vote of this board, the variance is granted, Mr. Bremer, Mr. Nowak, on those conditions. Is there anything further to come from the board on this case?
Not for me.
Okay, very well. We we will conclude that case and we will move right into our next 8:30 case, presuming we have everybody here on the Worthington matter. Do we have Mr. Patel and or Miss Jester?
Tushar Patel here.
Okay. Is Miss Jester there?
No, she will not be joining.
Okay. And then do we have the CBO and the fire official?
We have the building official here for the city of Worthington, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is Lieutenant Dunn present?
He is not present at this time.
Okay. Okay, very well. We'll call this case. This is, as I indicated, it is a Worthington adjudication, appeal to a Worthington adjudication. It's case number 20-0144, and it deals with a Baskin-Robbins Dunkin' Donuts, I think, facility or premises located in that jurisdiction, and the building authority's adjudication number is noted on our docket. That being the case, let's have an introduction of the parties. Mr. Patel, would you state your full name, spell your last name for the record, and the capacity by which you're here representing the appellant? We'll do the same thing with the building official, and we'll have an oath administered.
Yeah, Tushar Patel, Patel. I am the franchisee and the operator for the Dunkin' Donuts, Worthington.
Thank you very much. Mr. Phillips?
My name is Don Phillips, Phillips. I'm the building official and plans examiner for the city of Worthington.
Okay, if each of you gentlemen would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, if you were logged in for the last hearing, you understood that we're down a man or a member, I should say, on the board due to the expiration of Chip Welch's term back in the fall. So we're a board of 4 today. Mr. Patel, would you still wish to proceed in front of this board?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And Mr. Phillips, any objection to doing that?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. Mr. Patel, you have the floor.
Okay, so some history. This was an existing Wendy's that's now being converted to Dunkin' Donuts. And as a result, we're having an interior walk-in box, walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, as is consistent with all our other restaurants in Ohio. And the building reviewer, Mr. Phillips mentioned the code required, a level surface floor on either side of the walk-in as a means of egress. But in order to create the transition between the surface and the walk-in box, which sits about 4 inches inside for the insulation, there's going to be that gap, and all the walk-ins that we have in all our restaurants do have that ramp. When you walk in, it's a walk-up ramp to meet the floor, and then another ramp from the cooler, which then leads to the freezer. So even speaking with the architects, that pretty much every store they design has been like this. We've talked to the manufacturer, Norlake, about this, and this is how they've designed their walk-ins up to this point. So we're just asking for that variance.
Okay. Someone might mute. There's some background noise, but questions of Mr. Patel at this time before we hear from Mr. Phillips?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Phillips, what's the building authority's position?
A point of order, Mr. Chair. I believe Mr. Patel is also asking for a variance for door width because his shop drawings indicate a 2'6" opening, and the building code requires 32 inches clear opening for egress. The way the building department looked at this, unfortunately, the building official cannot grant variances.
Right.
And the building code is very clear that you have to have a level landing on both sides. There's an exception for R3 occupancies. And the difference with R3 occupancies, those people are very familiar with their particular surroundings, and they're used to stepping through a door, then stepping down or stepping up, depending on which direction they're traveling. And the city of Worthington, including the fire official, really do not object to this variance to allow the ramp. And similarly, the width, 2'6" versus 32 inches clear. you're only talking a couple inches. I doubt if their operation is going to be impacted, and certainly the safety of the employees as they exit are probably not going to be impacted. So we do not object to either of those two variances, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I would say I certainly agree with you that the building official doesn't have any discretion to grant variances, but since we don't see appeals from certain jurisdictions, we think maybe those variances have been granted by those building officials, or at least through interpretational creativity. But that being said, any questions, Mr. Phillips, by members of the board?
I mean, does a freezer, I have a question. A freezer counts, is included under the building code? This is exterior walk-in freezer?
It's a room, yes.
Okay.
If it were not a walk-in, it would not be a room, correct?
That's correct. We have reach-in coolers in the city that do not have any sort of door. The people do not negotiate through those openings in and out. We have other walk-in coolers where the appellant or the applicant had decided to put a landing on the outside the door. So you step up to a 4-inch high landing, open the door, negotiate, and go through the door, so that way you're level as you go through the door. So there's a lot of creative ways of meeting the building code that we've seen. But yes, a reach-in cooler would not require a landing because no one's going into that reach-in cooler.
That makes sense. Okay, Paul, Chip, Brad, what's your comfort level with the variance?
I don't have a problem.
I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with this one. I mean, operationally, having some type of a ramp in or out to negotiate that height difference is normally occurs with these. I don't know if I've ever seen a landing before or been required to have one, but I mean, I would be okay with the variance.
Okay, are there conditions, Mr. Phillips?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We have our standard use condition, Paul?
I don't know if that's necessary for this particular case. I mean, it is a restaurant. I don't want to hamper them if, hey, they need to this one doesn't, something happens to this one and they have to replace it. I don't want to have to come back before our board if they need to replace that piece of equipment.
Valid point.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And then the life safety of this variance is very low. Maybe there's one, maybe two people that are in that freezer at any given time, and I would assume the doors open at that time, and they are familiar with the operation of that freezer. So I don't think there's a big life safety issue at it that would warrant that.
Okay, very good. I would entertain a motion then.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 20-0144, the appellant is Tushar Patel for the premises Duncan/Baskin Robbins at 6130 Linworth Road, Worthington, Ohio 43085. The appellee is Donald Phillips, building official for the City of Worthington Building Department, and adjudication order number 2020-1073, parent numeral 4 and parent. I move to grant the variance for this case, noting the no objection of the building official.
Okay, very good. That motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Variance is granted unconditionally by a 4-0 vote of the board. Best of luck, Mr. Patel. Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Is there anything further on this case? I assume not.
No, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, I just got an email from Susan that I see Mr. Reynolds, who's on the presenter list. I can see him on my screen, but it looks like we have everybody present for the next case. I can call the case now. and get the consent of the parties to advance it by 10 minutes, if that's what we want to do.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, all right, let's see if we can do that, and someone might need to mute. There's a little background noise. Okay, noting for the record, it's 8:51, and we're actually ahead of schedule. We do have the parties, we think, present for the 9 o'clock case, which is a Division of Industrial Compliance case. It's case number 21-0007, and it deals with a volunteer fire department facility located in Laurelville, and the division's adjudication is noted on the docket. Let's have an introduction of the parties. Let's begin with the appellant and or appellant's representative. State your full name, spell your last name, and the capacity by which you're here representing the fire department.
Okay, this is Richard Schultz. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Richard Schultz, SHULTZ, architect for the Laurelville Volunteer Fire Department.
Okay, and is Chief Valentine present?
He should be. I talked to him this morning, and he was going to log in earlier. I can give him a call.
I'm on the phone call, but I could not get logged in.
Okay.
Valentine,
that's okay.
BUTCHVALENTINE.
Okay.
I'm the fire chief.
Thank you, Chief. And then on behalf of the division?
Good morning, Jeff Eaton, EATON, Chief Building Official for the Division of Industrial Compliance.
Okay, and my understanding is we have division and a counsel and the Assistant Attorney General Joshua Moore, correct? Monroe, I mean.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Is this a situation, Mr. Monroe, where you are going to be interactive in the hearing?
Good morning. I am not going to be interactive on this hearing, but I will be on the next one for the division.
Okay. Well, I was obviously gonna caution the appellant that they would have the right to have counsel. I don't think I need to do that in this case. The other point of business, and maybe you were logged on, I think Mr. Schultz might have been, if none other. We're a board of 5 today. We're proceeding as a board of 4 because of an expired appointment that has not been reappointed by the governor's office. Mr. Schultz and Chief Valentine, any objection to proceeding in front of a board of 4?
No objection.
You sort of talked over each other on that. I'll ask Mr. Schultz first.
Okay, no objection.
Okay, and Chief, no objection?
No objection.
And Jeff, no objection?
No objections as well.
Okay, Mr. Schultz, you can present.
Okay.
Should we swear?
Good morning.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Sorry. Yep. Forgot the oath. Chief, Mr. Schultz, and Jeff, would you stand? Raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath? And thanks for the reminder.
Yep. No worries. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
We do that every once in a while just to make sure Nick's awake. Catch it on.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, Mr. Schultz, you have the floor. I do have a memorandum from the division, which is they provide us before these hearings in advance, and it looks like item 1 is the only issue that we're dealing with today on the adjudication order. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, you have the floor.
Okay. Good morning. So this volunteer fire station is new to the community. It provides additional storage of equipment and training area. The chief can talk about the improved response time, but the lot itself is small. There's no additional land to be purchased if we would consider an addition, but the budget at $832,000 is maxed out. This is a design build project. We've gone through a couple value engineering trying to get this thing in budget. The original budget was 800,000. So we're pushing the budget by an additional $32,000 to try to develop a safe room in this pre-engineered building. Is definitely a hardship, both design-wise and monetarily.
Okay, questions of Mr. Schultz by members of the board?
I have a question.
Yes.
You gave a cost of 120,000 to 150,000 to add a safe room? Is that correct? Have you ever designed a safe room in one of these?
No, I haven't. You know, we have Barbara Hoffman is our structural engineer. Conversations with them. You know, that's where I developed that pretty broad cost. The building itself, first thing I should back up a little bit. There's no living quarters here. There's no overnight personnel. Nobody there during the day since it's a volunteer fire department on call. But back to the building, it's a pre-engineered building for the economy of that type of construction. To reinforce that building for 250-mile-an-hour winds is just not practical. We'd have to switch building types. If we developed a safe room inside, it would have to support, you know, I'm making an assumption here that the building itself would collapse around it. So the building, the safe room inside would have to support the additional load of the building that would collapse. We have to have a restroom, we have to have HVAC, we need to be able to maintain all services as well as exiting out of that safe room. It's just pretty impractical to go down that road for this type of building.
So you have to have a restroom in the safe room?
I believe so. I mean, you could be in there for, you know, hours during some type of storm, tornado, earthquake.
Okay, and you mentioned that they don't sleep there, but I mean, isn't this for, you know, especially you're kind of in a remote area, if people had to evacuate because a storm was coming, that this would be a place where the firemen could evacuate to, you know, if they were not safe in their own houses, so they could stay on site or stay there during a storm. Is that the purpose?
I'll let the fire chief answer that question.
Okay.
Most of the residents in Laurelville all have asbestos in their houses. And there is a school in the village that is used for a tornado shelter.
Chief, if you would not mind for a moment, it's hard to hear you because I think you're trying to listen to the computer as well. So if you could turn your computer volume down and just use the telephone, that way we won't get the feedback. Thank you.
I'm not close to my computer, so.
There.
The people in the village, there's actually a tornado shelter at an elementary school that's right in town. Everybody in town knows that's where the tornado shelter is. These volunteers come from 4 different townships all over the area. So chances of people getting to that station and staying there from out of the outskirts is probably not going to happen. They're going to stay in their own homes and then report to the fire station after the tornado goes through and get the equipment out of the station to respond to whatever type of call we have. But like I said, the residents in that area know the school is the tornado shelter to be used.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions of either the chief or Mr. Schultz? Jeff, what's the position of the division?
We have no objections to the request. As Richard said, this is a volunteer department, so I think the intent of that code provision is for fully staffed, full-time occupied department, like a 911 operations center or something like that. So seen a couple of these. I think this comes before the board, so we're okay with the request.
Okay, comments or the expression of sentiments by members of the board.
I don't mind going first for this one, Mr. Chair. This is Paul Began. This one's a little bit difficult for me because we have granted variances for this particular item in the past. Normally, when it's an addition to an existing fire station or something like that, where trying to bring the whole fire station into compliance, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This is a brand new structure, and though I think the code's probably a little bit difficult on this, it makes sense that we want our emergency response centers to be able to be functioning after a severe weather event. And that's really the intent of this code section, to say, if anything, we need to have our first responders be able to respond. So, you know, this is a tough one for me, right? It's a volunteer fire department. It's in a very small area. I'm sure they serve a very rural community. And the funds are not easy to come by. So I understand that, but again, I'm a little bit torn that if there is an instance when this provision of the code maybe should be applied, it would be this one.
Okay, Neil.
Actually, I didn't have a problem with it until I listened to Mr. Began. He brings up a very valid point on making sure that the facility is able to be active after an event. So I could go either way on it, maybe with some, well, I don't know if there's a secondary facility nearby or who would be a secondary responder and what the distance to the location would be. So maybe if we get a couple more questions answered.
Mr. Schultz, would you be able to wait for the chief?
Could you state that again, please?
Yeah, what is the nearest like secondary responder?
The fire chief would have to answer that.
Secondary response, Mr. Chair, would be a neighboring fire department, which are also volunteers. We are maxed out on the budget to build this building, and if we have to reevaluate and add more to it to build this building with a safe room in it, is going to be out of budget. We started out 5-6 years ago and talked to an architect, and they were saying $1.2 million to build the same building, only they wanted to build it out of wood, which I don't feel the wood structure will survive as good as what this clear span steel building will. But we are in a rural part of Appalachia, Ohio. We have no more money to put towards this structure and to put a safe room in when the majority of those residents in around Laurelville all have basements in their houses. Time we get a tornado event, the people are going to stay home and be safe until the tornado goes through. Then we're going to respond to the station to go out. We also have other. I have 4 stations, so we have 3 other stations that have 1 or 2 trucks in those that are outside of where we're building this station in the main area, because we cover 154 square miles of rural Ohio. So we have other response if this building would get demolished. We have 3 other stations with fire trucks in it that's going to come into the village to help whatever event we have. So not all of our equipment's going to be in this one structure.
Well, hearing that, Mr. Chair, I would be in favor of the variance then.
Okay, Brad.
Yeah, I have a question for the chief. Is this a replacement fire station or it's a new location in Laurelville?
It's a new location. The existing station we're in now was built in the late 50s and then added on to in 1968.
How's it paid for?
Pardon?
How is this? How do you pay for the fire station? Who pays for it?
the fire department has been approved by the Benton County Bank in Laurelville for an $800,000 loan paid back over 20 years. And so the max out of the money, we are funded through fire levies for the 4 townships that we contract fire service to. They have a property tax that's on their property, and that is put on by the township trustees, and then the village contracts with the 4 different townships to collect that money for fire protection.
Okay.
And those people are already paying 2 mills on their property taxes now for fire protection. And with the school districts, our school district, Logan Elm, just passed a major levy a year ago to build a new K-12 in Pickaway County, and we are actually in Hocking County. So those people are also paying that tax to the school as well as me. It would be hard for us to go back and try to get more millage to add more money to be able to pay over the $800,000. Right now, I've got the $32,000 with extras that we put into the building. I've got that covered, but to go any more than that, it's just going to shoot me clear out of the budget, and the bank won't approve us for more than the 20-year loan at the $800,000.
Well, Chief, here's where we are. I like Neil, I'd be in favor of granting the variance. We've heard from Mr. Big and some of his reservations. Brad, I haven't heard where you are with respect to this.
I would like to repeat a little bit what Paul was saying. It's interesting, these cases come before us and it's in the code, and routinely we'll give variances, and they're usually ones that they're renovating. And I was beginning to wonder if anybody ever builds a fire station with this requirement.
Not out in rural Ohio. It may happen in the city of Columbus or these bigger cities, city of Circleville. But you go down into the smaller villages that are covering 4 townships, and we are one of the few departments in Hocking County that actually cover 4 townships for fire protection. Most of the rest of them have one fire department that's a 40 by 40 block building or a pole barn building that's operating a fire station out there because they can't afford to do so, and we have not been able to get federal fire grant money or USDA money in order to build this building.
I understand, and the difficulty in getting property taxes increased is probably not easy either.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I guess my feeling is that this actually does, in my thinking, a hardship for the township and the fire department to certainly if we would deny this variance, and apparently it's needed to have this new building. So I would be in favor of the variance in this case.
Okay, let's talk about any conditions that might be necessary, but let's hear from Jeff first on that point.
I don't think we need any conditions, Mr. Chair.
Paul, would you agree with that? I mean, you may be a negative vote on this, but do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't think there's any need for conditions in this particular case. I mean, I think it's straight up variance. I think is probably appropriate.
Okay, I would, from one of the board members, I would entertain a motion.
Paul, do you want me to do it?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Okay, Mr. Chair, in regards to case number 21-0007, appellant Laurelville Volunteer Fire Department for the premises Laurelville Volunteer Fire Department, 16263 Pike Street, Laurelville, Ohio. Kelly Jeffrey D. Eaton, Building Official, Division of Industrial Compliance, for adjudication order number 2021-06-0001. I move the variance be granted, subject and noting no objection from the Chief Building Official and the Chief Fire Official.
I guess the fire official is a party to it in that sense. Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second, Brad?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, by a 3-to-1 vote of this board, Mr. Schultz, the variance has been granted without condition. Anything further to come before us at this point?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to state, I mean, my dissension on this particular case is that I don't harbor any ill will for the fire department or the situation that they're in. I think it's really if the state is going to require this to be for new fire stations, perhaps before they put this as a requirement in the building code, they provide funds available for situations like this so that they can do what is being asked of them to do. That's all.
So, Chief, you might want to get an excerpt transcript of what Mr. Began just said, and if you need to get that to your association lobbyists, that'd be a good thing.
Very good. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. That concludes this case.
Thank you all.
Thanks. That concludes this case. I'm just going to fill my coffee up. I understand we may have all the parties absent one for the next case. Susan, will you can you kind of do the roll call? Does anybody else want to take just a short break, or do you want?
Yeah, I need coffee too.
Okay, so we'll go off the record for just a second, and Susan, you can do the roundup.
I will. Thanks. Hi, this is Susan. It appears that everyone is here. Andrew, Marilyn, Robert Bell, Brayden. I do not see Brian Sanders. Is that correct? Or is he with someone? Andrew?
He looks to be on the call. He's logged on at the bottom. I don't know that he is, his initials are BS in the bottom, so I'm assuming that he's on the call. But
He is here. I see it. Okay. Last time I checked, he wasn't. He must have just entered. Okay,
No
so
worries.
it looks like everybody's here, and then Josh Monroe and Jeffrey Eaton. So,
Yep,
yeah,
I'm here.
we're ready to go when they return.
hello, everybody.
Hello.
Morning.
Glad to see you made it on, Robert.
Yeah, I'm at home. It worked just fine from my laptop at home. So
Technology is great. So, hello, Jeff. Sorry, we didn't get to connect yesterday. I just saw your email.
It looks like Jeff.
Andrew, can you?
Yeah, Brian, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was trying to unmute. Yeah, sorry, Andrew. Yeah, I was out getting tires put on the car yesterday, so.
That's funny. I actually have tires going on my car today.
Just in time for the ice. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect timing.
Hey, good morning, Robert. Haven't seen you for a while. Hope you're doing well.
yeah, Jeff, good to see you. Yeah, we're hanging in there.
Good.
Students come back today, right?
Yes, this week. Yeah, they started Monday. So does anybody know if there's a way to get more squares on the screen?
I've not figured that out, Robert.
I think you're limited to like 9.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
there was a note that said 9 max.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some special function in there. It makes us look like we're all sitting in an auditorium, or like a classroom setting where you can add
yeah.
like 20 people, but it doesn't work for what we're trying to do here.
So we do not have any counsel with us. We got the word that the AG was going to have representation, but we don't have any with us today, so hopefully that won't be a problem for us.
Well, this is Carl Schneider. I just heard that. Yeah, I'll certainly advise you that you have the right to secure counsel. And if you we needed to reset this hearing in order for you to do that, we'd do that for you. But we'll see where we go when we.
Yeah. And
what will happen is that the Assistant Attorney General will have the ability to cross-examine any one of the appellants that were to testify and offer testimony. You would not have the reciprocal ability to do that of Mr. Eaton. So, Susan, do we have everybody? Except, well, we don't have Neil, right?
Yes, the parties are here. I'm not sure if Paul's back.
Paul is back.
Camera's not on.
I'm back, Carl.
Paul, I see Paul. I don't see Neil. Okay.
I'm back.
And then Brad.
I'm here.
Okay. Well, let's call the case then, and see where we head. I'm going to call a case that was set for 9 o'clock on our docket, noting it's a little after 9:15. It's a Division of Industrial Compliance matter. It's case number 21-0002. It deals with a health facility located on the Miami University campus. The division's adjudication number is noted on our docket. Let's begin by having an introduction of the parties that represent the universities, and we'll try to do this individually here so you don't talk over each other, but state your full name, spell your last name, and then the capacity of someone might have, and then the capacity of which we got some background. Okay, and then the capacity of which you're. All right, if there's somebody in the lobby or something that's not on mute, you might want to mute if you're on the phone. But in any event, state your full name, spell your last name, and then the capacity by which you're here in a representative way for the university. We'll do the same thing with the division personnel, and we'll have an oath administered, and I'll see if I can get a waiver to proceed in front of a board of 4, and we'll work through the legal counsel issues. Go ahead.
So I'll start. This is Robert Bell, B-E-L-L. I'm Director of Planning, Architecture, and Engineering for Physical Facilities at Miami.
Thank you.
Marilyn, you're on mute.
One more time, please.
Excuse me, I'm Marilyn Heflin, H-E-F-L-I-N. I'm the Capital Project Manager for Miami University for this facility.
Thank you.
I'm Andrew Lau, that's L-O-U-G-H, with BSA Life Structures, the architecture and engineering firm working with Miami for this facility.
I'm Jeff.
Brian Sand.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Brian Sander, S-A-N-D-E-R, also with BSA Life Structures, project designer.
And is Mr. Bustle from Messer here present?
Yes, that's me, Braden Busold, Operations Vice President for Messer Construction. That's Busold, B-U-S-O-L-D, representing Messer Construction as a construction manager, design build partner with BSA Life Structures.
Okay. Any other, that's everybody that at least I have on my advanced sheet. Is there anybody else present for the university?
No.
Okay. I'll defer to you, Josh. You want to introduce your client?
Sure. This is Josh Monroe, Assistant Attorney General on behalf of the Division of Industrial Compliance, Bureau of Building Code Compliance with Jeff Eaton.
Okay. We'll dispense with the oath real quickly, and then we'll work through some of the other issues. If everybody who just entered their appearance, meaning Jeff Eaton as well, would stand, raise your right hand, and Nick, everybody but Mr. Monroe, go ahead and administer the oath, please.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, Mr. Bell, we had it, before we went on the record with the case, I overheard you talk about the fact that the division has counsel. The division does in fact have counsel. Mr. Monroe is an assistant Ohio Attorney General that represents that agency. And in cases like this, Mr. Monroe would have the ability, should he choose, to cross-examine any one of the appellant representatives who testify. The appellant representatives would not have the reciprocal ability to do that, though the university obviously has legal counsel or the ability to have legal counsel either through the Attorney General's office or in-house counsel that that would be able to represent the university in this matter should the university decide to do that. That being the case, do you wish to proceed without counsel, understanding Mr. Monroe's ability to cross-examine and your ability to secure counsel, or do you wish to have a continuance at this time?
I think we'll proceed.
Okay, well then one
Mr. Chair, it's probably also worthwhile explaining the dynamics of the board at this time.
Yep, yep. That was the next thing I was going to mention is that if you were on in the preceding hearings, you understand that by statute we're supposed to be a board of 5. We're only a board of 4 because of the expiration of one of our members' terms, and it has not been reappointed by the governor. That vacancy has not been reappointed by the governor's office. So even though we could have a split vote with a board of 5, with a couple in favor of the adjudication order and a couple perhaps in favor of a variance and one or more abstentions, it's much less likely than it is with a board of 4, because the dynamics here are if the Miami is unable to persuade more than 2 of the board members here today, Mr. Eaton's adjudication order will stand. Mr. Bell, do you still wish to proceed in front of a board of 4?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Monroe, any objection to proceeding in front of a board of 4?
No objection.
Okay. I will defer to the appellant's representatives and however they wish to proceed. Based on the memorandum that we did receive from Mr. Eaton this morning, it looks like we're dealing with plumbing fixtures and we're only dealing with item 1 on the adjudication. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, before we start, 2 quick items. One, I am a graduate of the Graduate School of Architecture, Miami University. While I was in graduate school there, I did actually work for the University Planning Department. It was quite some time ago, but I did want to have that known and out on the record and make sure that everybody's still comfortable with me proceeding.
Mr. Bell, any objection to that? And Mr. Monroe, any objection to that?
No objection.
No objection from the state.
And then second, and as we get into the discussion, this will become more apparent. We have had several cases similar to this come before this board. I think we need to be very careful about use of terminology in this discussion. The Ohio Building Code for restroom facilities talks about separate facilities divided by sex, okay, and not by gender. There's a difference in terminology between the use of the word sex and gender, and we want to make sure that we are consistent when we're saying, when we're talking about this particular project, so that we're not saying, hey, the code says we're allowed to have gender neutral bathrooms. Well, that's not the case, because the code does not even talk about gender, just has references facilities as separated by sex. So I just wanted to get that on the board so that we're not confusing our terms during this discussion.
Okay. Do any of the parties want to comment on what Mr. Began just said at this point in time, or do you just want to proceed?
We're prepared to proceed.
Okay, you have the floor.
So I'll just start by sort of setting the stage. Miami University is a public institution of higher education that invites students, staff, and guests from all over the world. part of our diversity and inclusion statement begins by saying Miami University is committed to and fully embraces the philosophy and belief that a diverse academic community is among an institution's greatest strengths. And in practice of fulfilling that diversity and inclusion statement, we feel that offering a wide variety of restroom facilities for our students, staff, and guests is the best practice moving forward, and that's what we're here to discuss today. And I'll let our designers continue the conversation.
Okay.
And so the adjudication order is about the separation of separate facilities shall be identified for each sex per 2902.2 of the OBC, which multi-fixture gender neutral facilities shown on the drawings are not allowed. So our request is a variance to that requirement for separate facilities identified by sex. This is, as Robert said, this was an effort to provide facilities that meet the evolving nature of the diversity and inclusion statements. It also allows us to have facilities that more accurately represent the mix of sexes in the building, with the programs historically that are in this building lean more towards one sex than the other. This allows us to really also have facilities that will help meet that need overall, allow the flexibility in those facilities. And the appeal is based off of the upcoming, actually the 2021 International Building Code has just adopted a provision which allows the use of multi-sex facilities for counting towards the plumbing code requirements. So we're asking that the gender neutral restrooms that we have provided count towards the plumbing fixture count. And that's the essence of the variance request.
Okay. Mr. Monroe, any questions of Mr. Lau at this point in time?
No, thank you.
Mr. Bell or Mr. Lau, any one of your colleagues going to present any information to the board besides what you did?
No, I think the other thing I would add is that we are actually providing, if we are able to include these numbers in our count, we would be providing more than the minimum requirement of fixtures. Minimum requirement is 51 based on occupancy load. We are providing 55 water closet dispersed in a manner that allows for dedicated sex bathrooms and for gender neutral restrooms as well.
Okay, Mr. Monroe, I'll give you an opportunity after, if there's any board questions, member questions, to inquire of Mr. Lau or Mr. Bell. I know you're not doing that now. Any questions of the appellant by members of the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would be happy to share some of the screen of some of the documents that we were provided for this case. I think it's probably makes some sense because I think we're glossing over some of the detail in this case. If you don't mind me throwing up on the screen here.
I think that's your prerogative. I think that's fine.
Let me see if I can't get this drawing open. Again, just so that we have a greater understanding of what you're trying to do in this particular case.
And Mr. Beacon, if you have difficulties, I do have the drawings up and able to share if you're having difficulties. There it goes.
Okay, this is the plan, and this is the only floor that we're making these changes at this time, or is there other floors as well?
There are 4 floors of the building, and they are very similar in terms of the multi-stall restrooms. On the upper floors, probably the first floor is the best to accurately display the typical. This is the lower level.
Okay. See, maybe it's better to hit the next next floor then. I'm not sure what's the best floor to do it. So we're trying to understand a little bit here. Now I'm stuck. Okay, is the unisex toilet rooms that you're providing, there are restrooms that you have that are defined for use by both sexes and
Yes.
also unisex. So explain how that works and how that meets the intent of the forthcoming code section, which may or may not be adopted by Ohio.
Sure. So in the yellow that is identified in the center of the plan, and the green are the dedicated bisex restrooms. So we have a women's restroom and a men's restroom. They're in the building that stacks all the way through the building.
So the men and women using those terms as definitions of sex.
Yes.
Are share a restroom.
Those are separate facilities. So that is a female restroom on the yellow and a male restroom in the green, and would be designated and signed as independent bisex restrooms. Those are two separate spaces.
Okay, so they are not combined?
Those are not combined in that location.
Okay.
And then in the red is our gender inclusive, gender neutral multi-stall restroom, where it would not be identified by an individual sex. That would be a multi-sex restroom, male and female identified, to be able to use that restroom, those four facilities, and that stacks on each floor as well. So we are providing a dedicated bisex restrooms, independents, the yellow and green, and then a combined mixed restroom in the red.
Okay.
And then the blue are individual restrooms, which we would sign as gender inclusive, gender neutral restrooms to allow them to be used by male or female as they are individualized restrooms.
Okay.
And then in the gender neutral multi-stall restrooms, these are full height privacy partitions between the stalls. So they go floor to ceiling to provide the intent of the 2021 International Building Code Plumbing Code, which requires that visual privacy be provided for those restrooms.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I have a good understanding now of what you're intending to do. I don't know if any other colleagues have questions.
I do have a question. Going back to the highlighted red restroom, there's 4 stalls included in that area, correct?
That is correct.
And the partitions go from floor to ceiling, correct?
Correct.
Are they suppressed, each individual stall?
Yes, we would have fire sprinklers in any stall that has walls that go to the ceiling. Any space that would have walls that go to the ceiling would have fire sprinklers.
And explain to me in a little better, you know, for my knowledge, the exact difference between the highlighted blue gender neutral restrooms to the highlighted red.
So the highlighted blue are individual rooms. They have a sink, a toilet, and within that dedicated room, like you would typically see in a family restroom or any other individual restroom. This is the red is a multi-stall space where there is a common sink wash area. And if Mr. Began would be able to zoom in, we could show that in a little bit more detail. But
I'm good with that. I understand.
Okay.
That's what I thought it was. I just wanted a little clarification.
Yeah, and one also note in that area in red, one of the 4 actually has a sink within the larger component of that restroom in the bottom right-hand corner. It does have a sink and but it is adjacent to an open multi-stall restroom, so it's part of that overall space. If that makes any sense.
Okay, thanks.
Brad, any questions of Mr. Lau? Did we lose Brad?
He's muted.
Yeah, sorry, they said there was some noise going on. I didn't want it to be me. The pink area, the red area. So I guess that one stall that has the sink in it, that's for like handicap, I'm assuming. Is that right?
Yes, that is a handicap accessible restroom. We included a sink in there for extra added convenience for that particular stall.
But the other three stalls in there share the lavatory.
That is correct.
Okay. That's, I mean, it seems that, why didn't you just put 3 more of the gender neutral singles instead of those?
It becomes a space issue when they become singles and are gender neutral. They require more floor space and ADA clearances in each one of those single-use restrooms have to be ADA compliant. This in a multi-stall situation would meet the ADA compliance percentage in a more space efficient standpoint. We were space efficiency is a conscious effort for this particular building to make sure it is meets into the cost parameters that we've been given.
I would add that from a diversity perspective, it is also something that we hear from our users and the student body and the staff that they have requested this kind of setup in other locations around the university to have a multi-user restroom that is gender inclusive.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay. All right. If hearing no other questions from members of the board of Mr. Lau or Mr. Bell, Mr. Monroe, does that prompt any inquiry on your part?
No, thank you.
Okay. We will defer to you and we'll hear from your client.
Thank you. Yeah, so the division opposes the variance, and I'll turn it over to Jeff to explain more in detail.
Hey, good morning. As you may be aware, the only provision or exception in Chapter 29 is for a room or a space that only requires one water closet, and that's where it allows you to replace the one room to 2 separate rooms where they don't have to be labeled by sex. That's really the only provision that's close to this topic. But other than that, that's really all I had this morning on this case.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Eaton by members of the board?
Yeah, let me go ahead and ask Mr. Eaton this question, and just understanding of, and again, there's no guarantee that Ohio will take the next International Building Code at face value. In fact, because of probably this particular issue, may decide to Ohioize this for sure. So want to get Mr. Eaton's understanding of that section that will, again, it will be an exception to the code to allow for unisex, gender undefined restrooms to be allowed to be added to the plumbing count. Is Mr. Eaton's understanding that that would not permit this shared stall type of restroom?
That's a question for Jeff, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. B, you're correct. There's no guarantee on what the Board of Building Standards would do with Chapter 29 from the ICC's version. As you mentioned, it's most likely will be Ohioized, but to what extent and what detail could be applicable to certain occupancies only, not sure. Like right now, the family restrooms are limited to assembly and mercantile. So, you know, there's no idea on how it's going to land or if it's going to land to be able to do this in the future.
Anything further, Paul?
No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Monroe, does that prompt the need for you to inquire of Jeff?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question for Jeff. So, Jeff, if I'm understanding you correctly, your position is against the granting of the variance, correct?
Yes, that's what our Mr. Monroe stated as well. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question for the appellate. I'm not sure which one was talking, whether it was Andrew or exactly what is the hardship that the university is claiming on this?
So I will start and have Robert add commentary. I don't believe it's a hardship. It is meeting the intent of the diversity inclusion and the nature of the facility to meet the needs of Miami University. It is our understanding that this has been approved in another facility in the state of Ohio, but that may not be the case depending upon.
The court case.
I can give you the appellate number, but the hardship is really just there's not a monetary hardship. It is really just providing the correct type of facility for the stated need of the Miami University community. Robert, is there any additional item that you would add there?
Just that as we have evolved our campus over time, we have seen restrooms be an area on campus where we get a lot of feedback from the users, both staff and students. And there is a desire for a wide variety of facilities for people who, have different situations, whether they are presenting as one gender different than their sex, and determining whether or not they want to kind of identify themselves as such when they enter a restroom facility, or have the freedom not to have that be sort of presented by the fact that they're walking into a sex identified space. We have had to request to convert restrooms in other facilities to take the doors off, to take the signage off. This was an opportunity where we were building a new building and wanted to provide that type of facility for our users, while we still wanted to provide a variety throughout the building with some of the sex identified spaces as well.
Wouldn't a gender neutral single stall serve the same purpose? I mean, people wouldn't have to identify using that.
Yes, though in terms of diversity and inclusion and universal design, you try to create a situation that is as equitable across the experiences as possible. Similar to accessible entrances, if you are requiring someone that is in need of that feature and requiring them to go somewhere other than the rest of the population, you are seen to be putting an extra burden on them. In this case, it might not be a physical burden as in accessibility, but it's more of a identifying, it's a burden upon their identity, their emotional, psychological state.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Monroe, does that prompt any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Now, I understood from Mr. Eaton that obviously the division that opposes the variance, the memorandum we received today said the state defers to the board's decision. Is there a distinction there?
I'll defer to Mr. Eaton on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just was basically stating we really don't have a position. Only to be consistent.
Right. Okay. I understand. All right. Gentlemen of the board, your thoughts and comments.
Mr. Chair, I don't mind going first on this one. You know, I think I'm going to applaud Miami in this particular circumstances that they are trying to work their design for their diversity and inclusion without exception to what's required by the code for the separation between the sexes. To add this, add the unisex into it and use that count towards the plumbing fixture count again. I think having the mix in this particular case is well thought out. The other case that I think that you're referring to that is in the court system, they wanted to use the exception as the rule, which was, hey, you know what, everybody has to use the same ones. Well, I think then at that point you're discriminating against those people who want to identify as one sex or the other, and then be forced into a situation where they don't have an option to have their own privacy. I think that is just as bad and just as discriminatory. So I like the approach that you've done in this particular case. I think I could be supportive of a variance for this one because you did not try to take the exception as the rule and used that exception in an appropriate manner, I think. I think the sticking point, and it may be for some of the other board members as well too, is, okay, once you get to a point where you have a multi-sex, multi-stall shared restroom facility, you know, that's kind of the point where I was getting to. Okay, there's a point where, okay, where diversity and inclusion outweigh people's need for privacy, and that's really what we're trying to weigh here. So I think overall, a good thing, but I think that may be a sticking point. I won't speak for the other board members, but I mean, that's kind of the one place where I think if there's any further discussion, it would be in that particular area.
Yeah, look, every case rises and falls on its own facts and circumstances, and so there can be a distinction here. And I do know that in the other case that has been at least generally referenced here, there were some board member questions dealing with the disparity of the age of the children that might be using the unisex restrooms. Probably don't have that in the university setting, or at least we don't have the same that same disparity. And I think I would find that as a distinguishing point, and I could find my way in favor of a variance sort of along the same lines, comments that my colleague Mr. Egan indicated just a minute ago. Neil and Brad, what are your thoughts?
Well, I too would like to applaud them. I mean, the design is laid out nice, and they are not totally trying to rewrite the code. I do have somewhat of an issue, as Paul may have, with the gender neutral multi-stall situation. I don't know if that's a necessary, is a necessary addition to this. And my only other issue, which I could work around, is we are not sure, and Mr. Eaton stated earlier, that we're not sure where Ohio's going to go as far as the changes in the OBC. But I probably could find my way to a variance, maybe with some further discussion on the general neutral multi-self areas.
Neil, because of the background noise, you faded when you said after some discussion, and you said the general, but I think you broke up.
I could probably find my way to a variance, as Mr. Began had stated previously, you know, maybe with more discussion on the general neutral multi-stall areas.
Understood.
And the reasoning for that.
But let's hear from Brad first.
Yeah. You know, the use, you're right. When there was children in a school, I think I had more of a problem with it. And you're right. I think the layout is, they did a pretty good job. And if I was there and I wanted to find a male restroom, I wouldn't have any trouble finding it. I would, a college is a place of diversity. I think I would be supportive of this variance.
Okay, Mr. Bell or Mr. Lau, do you want to sort of pick up where Mr. Gehring suggested we should pick up on the discussion points that he raised with the general area sex neutral issue?
Sure. I think if Mr. Began, if you might wouldn't mind going to page 15 of 20, there is an enlarged plan of that particular restroom. It may be easier to read and provide the detail that you're looking for, and it's highlighted there in the bottom right-hand corner.
While we're getting to the detail here, I would just add that, as you mentioned, university is a place of great diversity, and we find that because of the typical age of a university student, that some of our students that are finding the need for this restroom are often in a transitional phase. So they are in the process of transitioning from perhaps identifying as with their gender and sex being the same to something different. And that's one reason that I've heard from our constituents of why they like to have this kind of restroom set up.
And I can relate to that and understand that and applaud you for that. My bigger concern with this area is more like of a security type of issue.
So, and you just did about the visualization of the space that is your security issue. This allows it to be in a space where it is open to the corridor and along a very well-used corridor that is academic in nature. It does provide that visualization to the sink area, so that there is an issue at that area. It is clearly seen from the corridor. From sound standpoint, you are able to be heard out in the corridor if there is an issue that comes up. We have seen that this studies have shown that this is that ability to leave it open helps mitigate that security issue or perception. Excuse me.
Neil, just if you look at the plan there that I have blown up there, I mean, there is no door to the stall room. You know, the individual stalls can lock, but the rest of it is open.
I did see that, Paul, but thank you. Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay, Mr. Monroe, any questions in light of Mr. Began, well, our board members' comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. So where does that leave us? I'd be in favor of the variance. I'm not sure whether there'd be conditions imposed or not. I think I heard through the comments that other board members may be marginally favorable, if not totally favorable towards the variance, but let's go walk through that again. Paul, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, I think the approach in this particular case where they've provided restrooms that could be used by either sex, in addition to defined sex restrooms, I think that mix is probably the way to manage this, and I think their design is thoughtful. So I'd be supportive of a variance. And in the end, I mean, this might be a little bit lighthearted, but you know, I think they're going to find that once women have to use the same restrooms as men, they won't be using those restrooms anymore. I think I've heard many a time, right, that women that have had to use men's restrooms find out that the men are not as clean as the women are. So this may end up solving itself down the road anyways. But yes, I'd be supportive of a variance in this case.
And Neil?
I even though there is no door on the gender neutral multi-stall facility, security is still somewhat of an issue to me personally, but I would support a variance. I believe the plan is laid out very professionally, and I do applaud them.
Okay, and last but not least, Brad?
Yeah, just looking at this blow up that Paul has on here, each stall is, you know, completely separated. The only thing that's being shared is the lavatories. And, you know, in my travels, I've been in Europe, similar situations, and I didn't really find it with adults a problem. So I would be in favor of this variance.
Jeff, any conditions?
No, sir, I don't believe so. Thank you, though.
Okay, Paul, you agree with that?
Yeah, let me ask, I was going to ask Mr. Eaton if he thought it doesn't make sense to have at each restroom some type of directional to other restrooms. So if, let's say for instance, you came to the women's restroom and you're like, I wish there was, you know, that there'd be some type of wayfinding at each restroom to point to another location that you could find one that's more comfortable. Or vice versa, right? That you find and it says, you know, multi-sex restroom, and it directs you to a women's restroom if that's what you want to do. Do you think having a condition for some type of signage to that effect, it would be helpful in this case?
I do. That's a great idea, Mr. B. And you, like you mentioned, a small placard, color coded, kind of like Andrew has it on the plan somewhere.
Yeah.
A little evacuation type plan thing at each location. I think that's a good idea.
To the satisfaction of the building official?
Oh yeah, we're gonna let Jeff figure this one out.
Yeah, but I can't even figure out what it would say. I mean, to be honest with you. Mr. Bell, Mr. Lau, would if that condition were imposed as a condition to the variance, would that cause any objection to the university?
No, there would be no objection.
Okay. Then let's try it.
All right. Well, let's give me a second here. I will put together a condition, and then I'll put it up on the board for everybody to take a look at.
You want us to hang by or go off record?
It's up to you. I just need about a minute.
Yeah, we'll go off record for just a second. Are you ready?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's go back on the record, Nick.
All right, I'm going to throw this up on the screen so that hopefully everybody can see it. There we go.
And real quickly, Nick, I don't see Nick on my screen. You're still connected?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Great, thank you.
This variance is conditioned on the following. Number one, identification and directional signage shall be provided at each restroom to the satisfaction of the building official. And number two, this variance is granted based on the use, construction, occupant load, project area, and level of activity identified on the approved construction documents, including the maintenance of all building systems and any conditions required herein. That's it. So,
Mr. Lau, Mr. Bell, are those conditions satisfactory?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
And Mr. Eaton?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
yeah, and as we discussed, I mean, the intent of the identification and directional signage is so that people feel comfortable knowing that there is a restroom facility that is right for them and know how to get to them.
Yeah, agreed.
As clear as I can say, that so when you and Mr. Eaton work through the details of what that signage says and what needs to be on it, I believe that's the intent of that condition.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
With that being said, Mr. Chair, you don't mind a motion?
Please.
For Board of Building Appeals case number 21-0002, the appellant is Miami University for the premises Miami University Health Science Facility at 421 South Campus Avenue, Oxford, Ohio 45056. The appellee is Jeffrey Eaton, building official, Bureau of Building Code Compliance for the state of Ohio, and adjudication order number 2020-02-2286. I move to grant the variance subject to the conditions previously read in the record and noting the objection of the building official.
Okay, that motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the variance is granted on those two conditions, the signage condition and the standard use condition. Mr. Monroe, anything to come further on behalf of the division?
No, thank you.
Anything on behalf, Mr. Bell, on behalf of the university?
No, just thanks for the thoughtful conversation.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That concludes that case. You can sign off or stay on as you wish. It's a public hearing. Susan, do we have the appellants and the parties for the Columbus case present?
I believe everyone's here, but Mr. Bogan, and he may have entered by phone. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, let's call it and see where we go. This is a case that was set for 9:30, noting it's about 10:05. It is a Columbus matter, and it's case number 21-0005, and it deals with the Center Science and Industry, the COSI premises located in the city of Columbus, and Columbus's adjudications noted on our document. Let's have an introduction of the parties. Let's begin with the representatives for the appellant. Do we have Heather? Is it Rother?
Yes, Heather Rother.
And then Brad.
Yeah.
And then Brad Parrish.
Yes, I'm present as well.
Okay. And then do we have Mr. Bogan? Do we know?
I don't believe he's joining us today. We'll represent our client.
That's very well. I will cross him off. And then Mr. Goshen, are you present?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And Battalion Chief Sanders? All right.
I don't believe.
Susan, do you see him on?
I guess he's not. I saw a 614 number, so I assumed it was him, but evidently not.
Mr. Ghosh, do you know whether Columbus Fire was going to participate today?
Mr. Chair, he told me at 8:30 this morning that he was going to be here. Let me see if I can reach him.
Okay, let's just stand down for a second and go off record. Well, with that being said, Susan, do you know whether we have our OBETS parties?
Let me check on the individuals who entered by phone. I have 614-565-4907. Could you identify yourself?
Yes, that's Mike Corbett with OBETS.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank
We've
you.
added you to the presenters list today.
847-980-9843.
Yeah, that's Todd King from Heitman Architects for the OBETS project.
Thank you. And 614-325-4603.
That's Bill Toole, building official for OBETS.
Thanks, Bill. And 614-836-5403. You're muted. 836-5403. You can unmute by hitting *6 on your phone. Is this Scott?
Yeah, Scott Height, Madison Township Fire Department.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Uh-huh.
That's it, Carl, for the OBETS case. And I'm sorry, I believe.
We don't have Mr. Wyatt or Mr. Wright or.
I believe he was here. Maybe he left for a moment. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll pay attention.
All right.
You know, either way we did it, but
Any luck, Mr. Ghosh?
Mr. Chair, unfortunately I texted him and I called him. I can't reach him. He did mention that they were having some issues somewhere this morning, but I don't know if he's tied up.
Right. Does that mean it sound like?
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Let me defer to my colleague for a minute. Are we comfortable proceeding without the chief?
Mr. Chair, I would be okay. I know Mr. Ghosh and Chief Sanders do discuss issues like this quite a bit. I would be comfortable with Mr. Ghosh's representation of the fire official's position if we needed to have that input.
Okay, so Mr. Ghosh, would you have his quasi-proxy to at least relate what information you have from communications with Chief Sanders?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Biggins, right. We talked about it quite a bit.
Okay, then with that, let's go on record. I've already called the case. Let's have an introduction of the parties, beginning with Ms. Rother and Mr. Parrish. State your full name, spell your last name, and the capacity by which you're here representing COSI.
It's Heather Rother, Roether. I'm with Archel Architects, and we are the architects of record for the, it's 33 West State Street, part of the Scioto Peninsula project, across from COSI.
Yeah, it's across from COSI. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Parrish?
Oh, Brad, you're muted.
He's still, there you go.
There we go. Sorry about that. Brad Parrish, owner of Archall, and architect of record for this project. Heather is the project architect for.
Thank you.
Thank
you. And then Amit?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amit Ghosh, GHOSH, Chief Building Official, City of Columbus.
Okay, very well. So three of you would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, Ms. Rother and Mr. Parrish, and Mr. Ghosh for that matter, we're a board of 5, the way we're designed and created under the statute. But we're a board of 4 today because we have a vacancy, a term expired, and that vacancy has not been reappointed. So the possibility of a split vote probably increases with a board of 4 rather than a board of 5. So that being said, are you still comfortable proceeding? Because if it's a split vote, it's going to, the adjudication order of Mr. Ghosh is going to stand, and you will not walk out with a variance in hand. That being said, you still want to proceed today?
We do.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Ghosh, any objection to that?
No, Mr. Chair. Thank
Okay.
you.
And then Susan, I did see somebody with a 614 number that was in the lobby that popped up on the screen. Do we think that might be the chief?
Yes, Battalion Chief Sanders here. I'm so sorry for the delay. We had technical problems. I just was able to get in. My apologies.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So, I haven't administered the oath yet. So if each of you would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath, or did we already?
We already did an oath. If you want me to swear in, Mr. Sanders.
Yeah, Chief Sanders, would you raise your right hand? Stand, raise your right hand.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, Ms. Rother and Mr. Parrish, you have the floor.
Yeah, this project is across from COSI, as we said. It is a multi-story, multi-family project that has two types of construction. It's a podium construction type 1A with 3A above for the apartments. During our plan review working with Josh Shelley, the plans examiner for the project, he noted a comment regarding the stair shafts and stair construction penetrating through the podium. It was under our interpretation of the code, and the intent of the code that the type of construction is to match sort of the adjacent type of construction that it serves. And so therefore we did wood construction above the podium with wood stairs above the podium, and concrete walls below the podium with concrete pan stairs serving the two lower floors. Ms. Rother also went to the International Code Council and sought an interpretation for this section, and I believe has included that on our submission today. And the International Code Council has clarified it, however, has also deferred to the local jurisdiction or the local code official on the interpretation. They also gave additional information for a code change that will occur in the 2021 IBC that further clarifies our point, and that's also included within the application materials today. So I think today we're here really on understanding the position of the Ohio Board and their position and interpretation and intent of the code for this section.
Okay, questions of Mr. Parrish?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Ghosh?
Mr. Chair, I do have some reservations, simply because the stairway enclosures are the last line of defense, and wood stairs. I realize that, as Mr. Parrish said, that this may be included in the 2021 IBC. Again, we don't know if the state of Ohio will adopt it, and we don't also know in between, because these podium buildings with the wood frame superstructure are now going through a lot of scrutiny from SFPE, from NFPA. They're looking at the whole fire load issue, and we don't really know how it'll all shake out. So I do have reservations about wood stairs in a pretty large building with a lot of occupant load.
Okay, before we hear from the chief, any questions of Mr. Ghosh by members of the board?
Yeah, I do. Mr. Ghosh, what do you think about the IBC's interpretation of the code as it is now? That, you know, when you change the type of construction above the pedestal, that it could be wood.
Mr. Chair, to Mr. Smith, we don't know when this code is adopted in the in Ohio, how the language will say. Excuse me, and as you know that this whole you know, fire retardant treated wood and Type 3B construction and Type 3 and Type 3A and Type 3B construction is a new thing. It came about in the 2017 IBC. I don't believe that this whole use of fire retardant treated wood approach to construction has been really vetted out like it will be probably over time, and there'll be fire events that everybody will learn from. So I'm not as eager to accept, okay, it's not in the Ohio codes, but we'll accept it anyway.
Can I answer your question, Brad? Any other questions, Brad?
I thought his interpretation applied to the current code as it is now. Am I incorrect in that? Not the future code of the IBC code, but the interpreting our code as it is now.
Yeah, if I may have the floor, yeah, section 1011.7 talks about the consistency of materials with the type of construction and where it's located. That is in the current code today. What the future code of the 2021 IBC sort of further talks about the silent element about the stairs itself, and connecting these can be of dissimilar material. So I'm asking for clarification of the current code and giving supportive information on, you know, where potentially the intent of the code is going.
Well, depending on the interpretation, you may not need a variance. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Right. And this case is more about interpretation of the current code than it is about a variance in my eyes.
Okay, that's what I kind of thought. And the other thing is, though, I wrote a note to myself. The cost savings was like $54,000 that you guys listed here on almost an $18 million project.
Yeah, this is not, yeah,
which is really infinitesimal. I mean, and you said the whole thing is to save money.
No. I never said, I think this is more about an interpretation of the code that's in. Look, 50% of our business right now is multifamily projects. We have done this for the last 5 years on projects in the city of Columbus where the type of construction changes at the podium. This will change how we do our projects moving forward. And so it's good to understand really what the intent and interpretation of the code is for this type of building type.
So there's no hardship. You just want an interpretation of the code.
Yes.
Yeah, I need that commentary, Paul.
Yeah, no, it's not in the commentary, and I've been quiet just to let everybody have their say. Like Mr. Parrish, our firm does do some multifamily projects as well too, and have very similar situation where, all right, we got to do steel stairs in a CMU enclosure under the podium, and once we get to the podium up, because the rest of the construction above the podium is wood, it allows for the stair construction to be wood within the stair as well too. So just for the rest of the board members to understand, the way the code is set it up is saying, hey, you can build residential structures, up to 4 stories tall, made out of wood. You see them all over the place, right? You drive down any highway, you look off to the side, you see these, 3 and 4 story tall residential structures. They're made out of wood. Everything in it is wood, including the stairs. What the code allows, and again, this is probably more for urban situations where, okay, we don't have a ton of land to do surface parking or separate garage structures. Well, we're doing parking underneath. Because that's the only way to do this. And so we put them up on a podium. So the code understands that, hey, it's the same structure, whether it's on the ground. We have a 3-hour rated podium level between them. It's as good as the ground. So in this particular situation, what happens then when you go from one construction type to the other in between? And again, I've had projects there that let you switch materials in there. I believe that's what the intent of the code is, to allow that to happen. Because again, the supporting structure, the shaft itself is framed out of wood. That's enclosing the stairs in many cases. So having the stairs constructed of wood, I don't think is making it less safe than the construction that's around it, in my opinion. And I hate to disagree with Mr. Ghosh because I respect him very much.
Everything in it is.
Okay, Chief.
On the fire side, it's not our job to make a decision on the code. It's our job, or to interpret the code. It's our job to enforce and follow the code. I tend to lean with Mr. Ghosh in the fact that it's early, we don't know, but I understand that it's a gray area. It's not in the Ohio code. It's the International Building Code, and I understand the question. On a fire standpoint, I would personally, the wood stairwell, at least causes a red flag to me. I mean, steel is going to last longer, but I would lean with Mr. Ghosh, although I understand that it's a gray area.
Any questions of the chief by members of the board? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Parrish, anything further before we sort of take a straw poll?
Yeah, I do. I just want to make sure that the comment that we received from the city also is stating that the shaft must comply to a type 1A construction. So we're not only talking about the wood treads and the stairs, but we're talking about the shaft itself too. So it's both elements, and we are providing it does connect more than 4 stories. We are providing a 2-hour separation between the shaft and the adjacent spaces. So, I mean, it is, I want to just make sure that everybody's aware we're not only talking just about the stairs, but the shaft itself. Okay.
Mr. Ghosh, any comment on that?
No, Mr. Chair, I wasn't aware that we were asking them to build a type 1 construction shaft. Most of these that we see, sometimes, in most cases, they construct the shafts first and they construct them out of CMU, and in some cases, they may construct them out of wood frame, but usually we see the shafts out of CMU.
Yeah.
But we did not, I don't think we have asked them to construct type 1A shaft compliant with type 1A construction.
If I may, if I point you to the correction letter from Josh Shelley, item 2, and I will read this for everybody since they may not have it in front of them. Podium building is penetrated by a 2-hour stair shaft with proposed wood stairs above the podium level per revision. The shaft must comply with construction type 1A construction for the entire shaft. Types 1 and 2 construction are those types of construction in which the building elements listed in table 601 are of non-combustible materials, OBC 602.2. Revised documents to reflect the intent of the construction type. So the comment we received from the city talks about the shaft as well.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I will address that with Josh. That's not how we enforce this.
Okay. All right. Paul, Neil, Brad, your thoughts on moving forward?
For clarification's sake, the construction of the shaft using the most restrictive type of material is going to be off the adjudication order, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so now we are just discussing the construction of the stairs. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
With that being said, is the building and the fire officials' position the same for you?
Good question. Mr. Ghosh, Chief?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're not too enamored with wood stairs, but we understand that the code language is not exactly clear.
Okay.
And Fire agrees.
Right.
Fire agrees with that. Cummins Fire agrees with Mr. Ghosh's statement also.
All right, and I think you said as much earlier, Chief.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe we'll start with Paul.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think for this case, well, again, I respect Mr. Ghosh's approach to the code most of the time. I think in this particular case, that gray area, and I understand leaning towards being safer, but I think the code, you know, at least in my position, reads that you could have 2 different construction types, which would permit those stairs to be constructed of wood above the podium, as if it were sitting on the ground. So I would be in favor of a variance for this one.
Well, is that what we're doing? We're granting a variance even though we're really interpreting compliance?
Well, I think we have to. I think Mr. Ghosh, you know, wrote up his adjudication order according to the code as he sees fit, as he should be doing. And I think in our case is to granting a variance in this will allow the project to move forward as if we were having a variance, you know, towards that interpretation.
You understand that, Mr. Parrish?
I do.
Okay. Neil?
So I have an additional question. Typically, we do not interpretate the code, correct, Paul?
Yeah, I think.
So with that being said, we are going with Mr. Ghosh's interpretation of the code.
We usually presume the building authority's adjudication is a correct interpretation of the code, and then we grant relief from it. So yes.
See, in this particular case, Neil, though, we're a little bit different because the appellant has provided reference from the International Code Council, which has provided an interpretation which is contrary to Mr. Ghosh's. What it leaves up, and again, if you read in more detail, what the response says is, we'll leave the details of how those two different construction types interface up to the code official, which kind of opens the door to interpret it in a more restrictive way.
And I understand that, and I did read the commentary, but my position here, and I want to direct this to Mr. Parrish, this board is not a precedent-setting board, and you did indicate that this would be your position moving forward, so I don't know if and when it will come before us again, depending on whoever the building official's interpretation is of this code, but at this time, for the amount of, the difference in the monetary amount, I would have to uphold the adjudication order because I do respect Mr. Ghosh and the fire official, and the fire official are going to be first responders. So with that being said, my position is I would uphold the adjudication order.
Okay, and Brad?
Can I ask Paul a question? You mentioned that it's common to have 4-story wooden buildings. And this is the same as being on the ground because of the first 2 stories here are this pedestal, which is, in this case, it's 5 stories of wood.
Yeah, the way that the code says that is you're allowed to have 4 stories for this construction type, which allows the wood, right? And it notes that if it's on top of a podium, and the podium can actually be 2 stories as well too. I don't know what it is in this particular case, if it's 1 or 2 stories, but the podium is actually allowed to be 2 stories. So you could have a 6-story building that is technically a 4-story building on top of a 2-story building. That's how the code would interpret it, because you have a 3-hour horizontal barrier between them. So that's the way that the code has it arranged right now.
Well, in this case, it's a 7-story building, and 2 stories are the podium, and 5 of the wood construction above it. So you mentioned 4 stories. I just wondered if that made any difference, the fact it was 5 stories.
I'll let Mr. Parrish talk to that. I'd have to look at the code a little bit more.
Yeah, so we are 5/2, and we are under the height restriction of section 5 it is. So for the type 3A construction. So we are adhering to all of those standards and really using that podium to give a new grade level for the project so that we can switch the type of construction below.
Red, I'm not and we're not setting a precedent like Neil mentioned. And so, your whole premise is there's no real hardship on your part. You're trying to set a precedent. I mean, but that's not going to happen here. That's what Neil's got a good point. I think the ICC email or letter, was very convincing. And I think Paul's arguments are good. But on the other hand, I'm looking at this from a hardship standpoint, not precedence. And there is no hardship. And in that case, I agree with the building official. If he feels, and the fire official, that steel stairs are, in their mind are a better option in this case, I will go along. So I'm with Neil. I would uphold the adjudication.
Well, there's not much to hear from me then. I would have supported the variance, but this is that split vote scenario where the adjudication order is going to hold and the project's not going to move forward as it could. But we got to get to a finality stage here. Mr. Parrish, you want to weigh in anymore?
So I think progress has been made because the bigger concern for this project was the stair shafts and if we had to switch to CMU type 1A construction overall. So I am, if that item is getting cleared up with Mr. Ghosh and Mr. Shelley today, then, proceeding with the steel pan stairs is, I'm actually okay with that. I was more concerned with the shaft itself. And I hope that, in the next interpretation of the code, this gets a little bit better clarified for future projects.
Right. So Mr. Ghosh, we sort of have it on high. You're going to handle that issue.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. The shaft is, as we talked about, it does not have to be type 1 construction, Mr. Parrish.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Well, I think that does clear the way then for our delivery.
Carol, do we need an amended adjudication order?
I don't know. Obviously, it took appeal to both issues. The one issue is mooted by the representations of the CBO.
Well, could you withdraw that portion of it?
It's a corrective. How would you do that, Mr. Ghosh? Can you withdraw that item from our consideration?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Parrish, since you had that in front of you, what item was that on the corrective? Let's just reference it here.
Yeah, so let's see, the correction letter was dated December 10th, 2020. And it was item 2 on the checklist items.
Okay, Mr. Ghosh, you withdraw item 2 on the December 10th, 2020 correction letter, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. Neil, thank you. I think that works now. All right, I would entertain a motion to uphold the adjudication order then.
I think we probably should at this point, again, because it looks like it's going to be a split vote. And in this circumstances, I do want to let Mr. Parrish know that, you could decide to ask for a continuance in this case until we had a full board. We don't know when that will be. The governor could appoint the position tomorrow and we'll have him, or her next week. It could be months from now. We don't know when that appointment's going to be made. In that case, there would be another member on the board. There would not be a split vote if you were able to convince them that, hey, this variance is there could be a path forward for you for variance on this particular item. So I just want to put that in front of you as a consideration.
So I need to go back just 1 second here. And this item 2 talks it only talks about the shaft itself. So if this item is being pulled, then there's nowhere in this comment letter that talks about the stairs. So I just want to make sure that we have all our paperwork in order here before we proceed.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
The adjudication order that I signed on January 7, 2021, the order says the podium building is penetrated with a 2-hour shaft with proposed wood stairs above the podium. The shaft must comply with the most restrictive construction type of the entire shaft. And I said that's an overreach on my, and we would draw that item at types 1 and 2 construction of those types of construction. So the issue at hand is the wood stairs above the podium.
Yeah, and again, it is specific and not meant to be general.
Is that clarifying to you, Mr. Parrish?
Yeah, I do believe it does.
So that being said, not to prolong this, since Mr. Ghosh referenced the order on January 7th, would the withdrawal of item 2 still apply?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
So he would have to remove the second line, the shaft must comply with the most restrictive construction for the entire shaft.
No, again, it's the specific versus the general. So the first sentence, right? With
Okay.
proposed wood stairs above the podium. That's the specific, right?
Okay.
It's not the general that we're discussing. And
Okay.
I think that's where we allow the specificity of the wood stairs, and that being the point of our discussion, to be the issue on the adjudication order. Where we will allow, I would agree with Mr. Ghosh's interpretation of the adjudication order, but not necessarily the building code in this case.
But does that, so I guess we just want to make sure, I guess, for Mr. Parrish's comfort level and the city's,
Right.
if we were to uphold the adjudication order, what does that mean practically going forward for the project?
Right.
I think it's the wood stairs, because that's the specific that's mentioned in the adjudication order.
And I understood from Mr. Parrish that with the resolution of the more comprehensive, serious issue, you can live with the adjudication order as it relates to steel stairs.
Yeah, yes, I at this time, yes.
Okay. And I think we could entertain a motion to uphold the adjudication order, and I think we've created a specific and sufficient record for Mr. Parrish and the city going forward if anybody wanted to challenge or needed clarification or misunderstood our order.
I believe so. I mean, we can go the other way too. I can motion to grant a variance, and we could do a split vote that way. It's one half.
I will leave it up to any one of the board members I'd entertain a motion from any one of the board members.
You want to fight for it, Neil?
No, I'm tired of acting like Chip.
In that case, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 21-0005, the appellant is Flaherty and Collins Properties for the premises 333 West State Street, Columbus, Ohio. The appellee is Amit Ghosh, building official for the City of Columbus Building Department, and adjudication order number A/O 2021-002. I move to grant the variance, noting the objection of the building and fire official.
Okay, I would ask one of the members to second that so that we can actually deliberate.
Well, you are a member. You could second that one.
I could. Yeah, I could. I will second it. That motion's been made. Nick, note my second. All those in favor, well, let's just do it. We'll do a poll rather than a voice vote. Paul, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Neil, how do you vote?
Nay.
And Brad, how do you vote?
Nay.
Okay. The motion to grant the variance has failed because of a split vote, which means in practical effect, the adjudication order remains in play. Anything further, Mr. Parrish, to come in front of the board?
No, not at all at this time. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, and Mr. Ghosh and Chief Sanders, anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good. Thank you.
Nothing
Okay.
further from fire. Thank you.
Great, very good. That concludes this case. Susan indicates we may have everybody. Can we just take just a short little restroom break and we'll hear our last case?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
This is Susan. If you're here for the Obetz case, let me go through each name and make sure that you are present. Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, Mark Wright? Is Mark And if you are on phone, you can hit *6 to unmute. Mark Wright?
He stepped away from his desk. He may have followed that restroom break.
Okay. Todd? Okay. Cliff Aiken?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. And Carl? Is Carl here? That's the one I wasn't sure of, if he's present. Doesn't
Susan?
sound like. Yes.
Mark Wright is on. He can't get off of mute.
Yeah, the only one I kind of didn't know if joined was Carl.
See, it's got to be on.
And I know Bill Toole, Scott Height, and Mike Corbett are all present. Everyone's present by phone.
Here's my screen.
I had it on there. I mean, what's this thing? I think it's off.
Jeff, can you move forward without Carl present? Or no?
I believe Todd from Heitman Architects is on the line.
Correct.
And we can move forward without Carl, yes.
Okay, thank you. Chairman Schneider,
Yes,
everyone is present for the next case.
except for Heitman.
Carl, yeah,
Yeah.
Heitman.
Okay. Great.
And I will be right back.
All right.
Okay, can you hear me now, Susan?
I can hear you. She just left for a second. All right.
I highlighted the sections that are.
Okay, I see Neil's not back. Is Paul? I don't see Paul.
I am here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, there's Neil. Okay, I think we're ready to move forward. We call last active case that's on our docket. And someone is in the lobby, Susan, I just saw pop in, but this is case number 20-0135. This is a matter of concern in Obetz, and it's a resumed hearing. It deals with the premises located at 5275 Center Point Parkway in that jurisdiction, and that jurisdiction's order number is noted on our docket. let's hit, all right, someone may need to mute. Someone may need to mute. Someone needs to mute because of the background. Let's have an introduction of the parties. Let's begin with Mr. Wyatter, and we'll try to take these individually, and then we'll have the OBETS representatives and the fire official enter their appearance after that.
Okay, this is Jeff Wyatter with Excel Project Management.
Thank you.
And this is Mark Wright with Excel Project Management.
Thank you.
This is Cliff Aiken with Excel.
Thank you. And didn't we have Mr. Kean?
Yeah, Todd Keene with Heitman Architects, Project Manager for Heitman Architects.
Okay, very good. And then let's go to the OBETS officials. Mr. Toole, you were on earlier. Are you on?
Yes, sir. I am Bill Toole, City of OBETS building official.
And Mr. Corbett?
Yeah, Mike Corbett with Village of OBETS.
And Marshall Height? Is Scott Height on the phone?
He's muted. He's unmuted now.
Marshall Height, are you with us?
You muted yourself, Scott. *6 on your phone. There you go.
Yes, Scott Height, Madison Township Fire Official.
Okay, very good. If everybody would stand, raise your right hand. Nick, would you administer the oath?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay, very good. For the purposes of the parties, all right, if you're on phone, you probably need to mute because it's going to create background noise as well as a delay, and it's going to be difficult for our court stenographer to pull off a good transcript here. We're a board of 5. I think the last time we met, we might have also had this discussion, but we're a board of 5, but our fire official appointee, there was an expiration of his term, and that vacancy has not yet been reappointed by the governor. Any objection in moving forward in front of a board of 4 on the part of the appellants, Mr. Wyatter?
No objection.
Okay, and Mr. Corbett, Mr. Toole, Marshall Height, any objection in moving forward?
I have no objection.
Okay, all right. That being the case,
I have no objection.
Thank you. The appellants have the floor.
Okay, thank you, sir. The last conference call that we did on December 15th, there were several follow-up items to that adjudication meeting. One of the items was for us to send copies of the lease agreement to the board and to the building officials so they could review the language regarding the responsibility to remove the connector building should the lease be terminated for any reason, and the responsibility to maintain the connector building. We have sent those lease agreements to the entire board and building officials. They are noted as Center Point Building number 3, 5275 Center Point Parkway. The other one is Center Point Building 2, 5271 Center Point Parkway, both in OBETS. A second item that we noted that we had as a follow-up item from our first meeting in December was we had a site drawing that was pulled up on the screen and distributed that showed a dock door at the CP2 building to the south, closer than 10 feet to the new connector opening. We have since distributed Heitman Architects drawings which do not show that dock door. It was shown on a site drawing, and it was intended to be a future dock door. It was never cut in or installed. So we do not have any dock doors within 10 feet of the connector building on either side, on either building. So I believe that's been cleared up with the documents.
So that moots
On the CP
that moots that issue?
Correct. On the CP2 building, above the location where the connector building is connecting, there is a window. That window is going to be removed, and a 3-hour rated wall partition will be constructed in that opening. The other item from
Say that one more time, please.
There's a fixed window above the connector tie-in location at the CP2 building. That window will be removed, and a 3-hour rated partition will be filled in that opening. It's a 3x6 window, I believe, is the size, but it is within 10 feet of the connector building itself. So we are removing that and filling in a rated partition. The other item from the board meeting on December 15th was Scott Height was unable to attend that meeting. And there was, although we've had review by Scott Height in the past and we forwarded that information to the board, there was a desire to hear directly from Scott Height in this meeting regarding access around the buildings. And thankfully, Scott is on the call today to respond to that issue. So from my notes from our meeting in December, those were the follow-up items. And we'd like to move forward with discussion.
Let's, I mean, rather than have board member questions at this point, why don't we use that as a segue and hear from the marshal. Marshal Height. Did we lose him, or is he muted, Susan?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I have no objections to the connector building. They have good access around both buildings, sort of putting the connector between the two. But they do have good access off of Center Point Parkway for the newer building, which I believe Center Point 3, and Center Point 2 building. They have access off of Center Point Parkway and also Toy Road because it sits on the corner. So I'm good with that.
Okay, Mr. Corbett or Mr. Toole, do you want to comment?
I'm fine with the revision document that they've sent in, eliminating any openings, any problems within the 3-hour window. And just as a comment, I'm sitting here looking at my review schedule. They have submitted revised fire sprinkler drawings for this connector. I was holding pending the outcome of this hearing. So all the documentation that was requested is now in place. I have no objection to the connector.
Follow-up question that, Mr. Chair, have you had a chance to review the deed restrictions that would go with the land that were provided, and are you okay with them as submitted? Question for the building official.
Right.
That's
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were speaking to the chair. Yes, I've reviewed those, and I'm happy with the comments regarding who's responsible for maintenance, who's responsible for removal, and the time frame for removal.
Okay. So what would be really then in front of us? Are there with the revisions and the steps that have been taken from December 15th through today, what is in front of us then if we were to deliberate on a variance? We're going to grant relief, if should we do so, to what?
The construction of a connector between the two buildings, the largest issue being the intrusion of another building into the 60-foot right-of-way onto the two unlimited area buildings.
Okay. All right. Paul, Neil, Brad, your comfort level moving forward?
Mr. Chair, last time we actually had drafted up a fairly lengthy set of conditions. I think we got close to the point of granting a variance. I would be supportive of a variance for this item. Outstanding questions were to make sure that the building official had the chance to opportunity to review those deed restrictions, and for Marshall Heights input, because as always, after it leaves here, it's the fire department that has to live with whatever decisions are made. So wanted to make sure that the fire official had the opportunity to review and is okay with what we are planning.
Okay, and Neil, of the same sentiments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And Brad?
Yeah, sounds like they have satisfied any concerns from the fire department or the building official, and they are in support of this variance. So I would be supportive of it as well.
So so Paul, what do you have to do? Do you have to tweak what was prepared last hearing to put back on the screen to walk through?
That is already done, Mr. Chair. If you don't mind, I will put them up on the screen and read those conditions. Reason why I asked about the openings next door, part of the conditions you will hear have to do with making sure any openings within 10 feet are enclosed. I know there's no dock doors, but there is a window. So I think if we leave that in there as written, it will be sufficient. But they are up on the screen for those of you listening on the phone. I just gave you another 10 or 15 seconds. Hopefully that feed has caught up with you, but I will read through them as well. For item number 1 on the adjudication order, variance is conditioned on the following. Number 1, the 8-inch water line beneath the connector structure shall be replaced with a concrete encased split connector to the satisfaction of the building official. Number 2, the continuous fire loop around each building shall be maintained. Number 3, sanitary piping beneath the connector structure shall be of an approved material to the satisfaction of the building official. For item number 2, the variance is conditioned upon number 1, electrical conduit beneath the connector structure shall be encased in concrete with an added spare conduit to the satisfaction of the building official. Number 2, a manhole to access the electrical conduit beneath the connector structure shall be installed on either side of the connector structure to the satisfaction of the building official. For item number 10 of the adjudication order, variance is conditioned on the following. Number 1, I want to make sure I'm in the right spot here. The existing exterior wall of the existing buildings, CP number 2 and CP number 3, and that references Centerpoint, shall provide a minimum 3-hour fire resistance rating at the connector structure and shall extend a minimum of 10 feet to each side of the connector structure and to the full height of the wall above the connector structure. Any existing openings within that 10 feet area shall be infilled with a wall providing a minimum 3-hour fire resistance rating. The architect or engineer of record shall provide a UL assembly or other approved means to calculate fire resistance for the existing walls to the satisfaction of the building official. Number 2, the man doors and the overhead coiling doors at each end of the connector structure shall provide a minimum 3-hour fire resistance rating. The man doors shall be provided with closers. The overhead coiling doors shall have both a fusible link and an electric operated closer such that the activation of the fire alarm will automatically close the doors. Number 3, the fire alarm system within the connector structure shall be interconnected into the fire alarm of both the CP2 and CP3 buildings, such that the activation of the fire alarm in either building shall activate the fire alarm in the connector structure. The fire alarm system in the connector structure will be operated and maintained as part of the automatic sprinkler system of the CP number 3 building. Number 4, the automatic sprinkler system for the connector structure will be operated and maintained as part of the automatic sprinkler system of the CP3 building. Number 5, the means of ingress illumination, parent egress lighting, and parent and exit signage for the connector structure will be operated and maintained as part of the system of the CP3 building. Number 6, access gates shall be provided through the fence on the property line to the satisfaction of the fire official. Number 7, this variance shall terminate and the connector structure shall be completely removed to the satisfaction of the building official upon termination of the lease for either the CP2 or CP3 buildings. Number 8, the above conditions, including the responsibility for maintenance of all building systems, shall be listed as a special condition on the certificate of occupancy for both the CP2 and CP3 buildings, and also for the connector structure by the building official. Number 9, an executed copy of a temporary mutual connector easement agreement detailing deed restrictions for each property and documenting the above conditions, including the removal of the connector building at the termination of the lease, and responsibility for maintenance of all building systems shall be filed with the Franklin County Recorder. An executed copy shall also be provided to the Board of Building Appeals. Number 10, this variance is granted based on the use, construction, occupant load, project area, and level of activity identified on the approved construction documents, including the maintenance of all building systems and any conditions required herein. And finally, number 11, the chief building official shall forward a copy of any certificate of occupancy to the fire department having either emergency response or fire prevention responsibility.
Okay, I'll direct this, I guess, to Mr. Wyatt or any of his colleagues. Are those conditions acceptable? Do you have any questions? Do you need clarification of any of those items?
Item 9, deed restrictions. We forwarded the lease agreements, which we believe are adequate documentation regarding the removal of the connector and the maintenance of the connector. Easements have not been filed.
Yeah, and I think that is sufficient. We do have a copy I did see in our records. I do believe the building official has a copy of that as well too. I think a receipt of some type showing that it has been filed with the county is sufficient evidence enough to satisfy that condition.
Oh, what I heard him say is that they don't have an easement, but you've got lease agreement, correct?
Correct.
That is correct. Yeah.
And I suppose you could record what I think Mr. Big is saying. If you recorded the lease, or at least a notification of that provision in the lease in the public record with the county recorder, that would probably be sufficient. I think that's what Mr. Big is saying.
I don't know about that. I think it needs to be an easement agreement, because if it's just a lease, that it does not necessarily encumber the properties. This is the
does encumber the property. Yeah, it does encumber the property for the two landlord attorneys. I mean, it does. You can't sell this building. Building would have to be sold subject to the lease and so on. So there can be a memo of lease recorded with the county, which you can do to put that those conditions in place on a recorded document.
Yeah, I think that would work actually, Paul. You'd have to, you couldn't sell the building, you'd be subject to those, it would be subject to the provisions of the lease.
That is correct.
And that's the objective here.
Correct.
I would have to take your word for it, Carl. I mean, that you know, they can make an amendment to the lease agreement that doesn't get recorded in there, and all of a sudden there's no obligations. You know what I'm saying? Tomorrow, both of them could say, hey, you know that thing that we said about that thing, let's get rid of it in the agreement, and it's not recorded, and now it doesn't go with the property. That happens all of the time.
Yeah, but it does. But you could reverse an easement too. The grantee of an easement could grant it back. I mean, it's, you know, I mean, that's the same, and then that doesn't get recorded, I guess. I don't.
I guess my thought, if it's, you know, if it's an easement agreement that is for the property and not necessarily for a tenant, that is more applicable to what we're talking about, rather than a means to an end.
Let me, Mr. Toole, do you have any comments on this?
I was going, this is Mike Corbett with the village. Okay. As part of the conditional use, the approval of this was to demo that connector anytime this lease is terminated.
It's going to be a condition on the occupancy. If the lease is terminated and or any property is desired to be sold, the connector's got to be removed.
So let me then fast forward. Is the city of Obetz okay then if there's just a memorandum of lease recorded?
Yeah, we would, because at any time that that lease is terminated and the connector still, it becomes a code violation.
All right, someone needs to
do that.
Okay.
Sorry. So, being part of the conditional use approval through planning and zoning, at any time if that lease was terminated, they have to tear down the building. If they don't, then it becomes a code violation, and then we can act on that.
All right. So, Paul, does that give you any?
Again, I defer to you, Carl. This is more your area of expertise than mine. So, I mean, if you think that, you know, what is being proposed and what is being done is sufficient enough to get to what are the intention of that condition, I would be okay with that. I mean, obviously the other board members probably need to speak as well too. And if that's the case, what would we need to modify the verbiage in condition number 9?
Okay, so you do not, I don't, you know, the including the removal of the connector building at the termination of the lease and responsibility for maintenance of all building systems shall be filed with the, is Obetz in Franklin County? Is it the Franklin County Recorder? I guess it is. Okay. So that could stay the same, right? Because what I heard Mr. Toole say in the beginning was he has those documents, and I heard Mr. Corbett say that the connector building would be removed at the termination of the lease. So we're good there. So it's just really, I mean, I'm just remember an executed copy of a memorandum of lease detailing restrictions for each property. You might be able to do that. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? In other words, I think you could probably supplant easement agreement with memorandum of lease.
I'll agree with that.
Was that Mr. Toole?
Yes, that to me that becomes binding language in this
it does.
appeal. Yes.
So
in that case, Mr. Chair, I will reread the entire condition number 9 again, just to make sure that we are clear and have it right in the record. I'm not going to show it back up on the screen, but condition number 9 shall read, an executed copy of a temporary mutual connector memorandum of lease detailing deed restrictions for each property and documenting the above conditions, including the removal of the connector building at the termination of the lease, and responsibility for maintenance of all building systems shall be filed with the Franklin County Recorder. An executed copy shall also be provided to the Board of Building Appeals.
Okay, Mr. Wider, does that satisfy your question with number 9?
Star 6.
Say that again, please.
It would satisfy from Excel's point of view.
Okay.
Yes, Cliff Aiken.
And thank you. And Mr. Corbett, Mr. Toole, and Marshall Height, is that satisfactory?
It
is
to me, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then
me too, from Mr. Corbett.
Mr. Aiken or Mr. Wider, or any of the appellant representatives, are there any other questions or concerns with the 11 proposed conditions other than what we've just discussed with respect to revising item 9?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. I think with that, I could entertain a motion.
Yes, Mr. Chair, for Board of Building Appeals case number 20-0135, the appellant is Pinchel and Company for the premises 5275 Centerpoint Parkway, Obetz, Ohio 43207. The appellee is William Toole for the Village of Obetz Building Department, and adjudication order number C2020-35. I move to grant the variance subject to the conditions previously read into the record and noting the no objection of the building and fire officials.
Okay, I think that motion's been properly made. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, folks, the variance has been granted on those 11 conditions. That would conclude this hearing unless there's anything further to come in front of the board. And hearing none, then that case is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
So
you
that-
very much.
Yep, that concludes the active portion of our docket. We did have a Hillsborough matter, case number 20-0033, dealing with 133 West Main Street premises in that jurisdiction that's been continued until February. We should probably consider moving to compensate ourselves for our preparation and attendance today. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so for January 27th, we stand to be compensated for our preparation and our participation in the virtual hearing today. We don't have any minutes to approve. We don't have any new business. Our next hearing will be February 11th. It will be virtual at 8:30 a.m. And so that would be for purposes of announcing our next meeting. If there is no new business to come in front of the board, I would invite a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we stand adjourned again, subject to our next hearing at 8:30, February 11th. Susan, thank you. Nick, thank you. And everybody enjoy your day.
You as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. See ya.
You too.